absence of cannabis, the dream life seems to become much richer. This causes me to sort of form a theory, just for my own edification, that cannabis must in some sense thin the boundary between the conscious and unconscious mind, and I sort of imagine the unconscious as a system under hydraulic pressure, and if you smoke cannabis, the energy which would normally be channeled into dreams is instead manifest in the reveries of the cannabis intoxication.
So this video is the second part of my discussion of Prince of Darkness. If you haven't watched the first part, Decrypting Prince of Darkness Part 1, you should definitely go back and watch that one, because I'm not going to be restating any of that material here. This is really just a direct continuation. So last time we left off talking about the green cylinder. I believe that the green cylinder represents cannabis specifically, and perhaps psychedelic drugs generally. First of all, the thing just kind of looks like a gigantic bong. It's made out of glass, and it has this swirling green liquid. Carpenter pulls out a lot of images that are very reminiscent of early anti-cannabis propaganda, sort of from the era of Reefer Madness, for those of you who know that film. But probably my best piece of visual evidence for this is what happens towards, at the very end of the film, in fact, when the influence of the cylinder has finally been destroyed. We have all these shots of the, let's say, cannabis-infected zombies exhaling smoke. It also sits very nicely in the symbolic structure of the film. After all, the green cylinder, as we discussed last time, seems to be a kind of catalyst for the development of states of higher consciousness. That connects with all the mirror imagery that we also talked about last time. The cylinder and self-awareness seem to go together. The film is so sophisticated. Carpenter has hidden subtext, details that to a sober person go unnoticed. They light up under the influence of the drug.
Jack! I know, it's an elevator and only goes down.
Yeah, look. Hey, all right.
Time for the medicine! Cheers!
This does what again, exactly?
Huge buzz. Oh, good. See things no one else can see. Do things no one else can do.
Real things?
As real as Lopan.
Hey, what more can a guy ask for?
Woo! It's like a drug. One of these glasses makes you high, but oh, you come down hard.
And then you start to really see the depth of Carpenter's achievement, because he's made a film about, at least on one level of analysis, about cannabis that only reveals its secrets, or at least is much more likely to reveal its secrets, if it's viewed from within the altered state, the slight shift in paradigm that cannabis affords.
I think that's an incredible achievement.
You know, I kept thinking maybe there's a book, or maybe even another film, or somebody somewhere that has connected these ideas already. And just to recap, those ideas are basically the relativity of paradigm and perspective, a kind of transition from a solar masculine into a lunar feminine perspective.
Cannabis as a facilitator of that transition. And then ideas about the non-locality of the unconscious. That really seems to be the meaning of the quantum metaphor that's used in the film.
Suppose what your faith has said was essentially correct. Suppose there is a universal mind controlling everything, a God willing the behavior of every subatomic particle. Now, every particle has an anti-particle, its mirror image, its negative side. Maybe this universal mind resides in the mirror image instead of in our universe as we wanted to believe. Maybe he's anti-God, bringing darkness instead of light.
At some point, I did come across a book that seemed to be a very precise match for Prince of Darkness's thematic material, and it's Prometheus Rising by Robert Anton Wilson. Now, this book is a
total classic.
One of the things I can point towards is the visual metaphor of the reality tunnel.
Well, the brain receives billions of signals every minute, and out of them we select a small portion and make a picture which we project outside and consider reality. That's our reality tunnel. That's our reality tunnel. A mosquito comes in the window. A mosquito will perceive an entirely different reality tunnel than a dog. A dog will perceive a different reality tunnel than a human being. Everybody does it differently. That's why no two people ever perceive the same interlude of time.
Carpenter is also clearly trying to represent the idea of paradigm, perspective, or belief system or worldview. And he's representing that idea with precisely the same visual image that Robert Anton Wilson uses, which is to say the tunnel. And there are other images that Carpenter picks out as well. In Cosmic Trigger, for instance, we have this concept of chapel perilous. And I believe it's even mentioned in connection with some statement, some kind of poetic statement about green goo and so on. So there's like particular poetic visual devices that are correspondent between the book and the film. But then, of course, there's kind of the whole general content of Cosmic Trigger, which is about introspective self-experimentation involving, I would say in a primary capacity, cannabis. It's like Robert Anton Wilson feels that he's conversing perhaps with extraterrestrial intelligences, or ghosts, or demons, or plant spirits, or he's just as willing to entertain, say, a kind of Jungian psychological hypothesis that perhaps what he's actually communicating with are simply aspects of himself, autonomous complexes arising from the unconscious. Again, the imagery that Carpenter employs is fairly precise in this regard, because Robert Anton Wilson is really operating off of Timothy Leary's 8 circuit model of consciousness. Now, full disclosure, I'm actually not a particular fan of this model of consciousness.
I think it's okay.
But so, I believe it's the first 4 circuits are described as like the terrestrial ones. But when you switch to the 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th, there's a kind of a real functional distinction there. These are the so-called extraterrestrial circuits. The 5th circuit is a kind of deeper consciousness of the body. It also seems to have something to do with aesthetic awareness and aesthetic quality. And both Leary and Wilson specifically mention cannabis as a tool to unlock the 5th circuit. The 6th circuit is the metaprogramming circuit, which is essentially about self-awareness. That's where we now get Prince of Darkness's mirror imagery. First you ingest the cannabis, then you confront yourself in the mirror. Following the 6th circuit is the 7th, which is the so-called I think Leary calls it the neurogenetic circuit and Wilson calls it the morphogenetic circuit. And they explicitly mention this circuit as being correspondent with Jung's collective unconscious. So this is now opening up to a transpersonal domain of archetypal memory. That certainly seems to happen in Prince of Darkness, with the pulling through of the lunar archetypal and perhaps explicitly satanic unconscious material from the mirror realm, essentially, into our reality. Finally, then you have the 8th circuit, which Wilson refers to as the non-local or the quantum circuit. This level is about non-local information reception.
Again, this is why I perhaps have a little bit of a problem with the underlying model. It's not altogether clear to me precisely what the distinction is between the 7th and 8th circuit. If the 7th circuit is really corresponding with the collective unconscious, the collective unconscious is...
But basically, the details don't matter too much here. I think you have to just kind of squint at it a little bit and see that the progression that Carpenter takes his zombies through is highly resonant with the progression of consciousness described by this model, which, although it was developed and pioneered by Leary, is deep in the DNA of Robert Anton Wilson's thought and discussed explicitly in both Prometheus Rising and Cosmic Trigger. So I want to take a second here to just kind of stress how incredible this is. Basically, he's made a secret adaptation of Robert Anton Wilson texts, and to be totally tight-lipped about it, you know, for over 30 years now.
How did the Roman Catholic Church manage to keep this a secret for 2,000 years?
Apparently a decision was made.
So in addition to Robert Anton Wilson, I also have uncovered some interesting correspondences with a British novelist and poet named Lawrence Durrell. He pioneered a form of fiction centered around the idea of multiple perspective. Probably his most well-known work in that regard is the Alexandria Quartet, which was published in the late 50s, early 60s. And it's a series of 4 novels where each novel tells the same narrative from the perspective of a different character. And there are aspects of these different accounts that are totally non-reconciliable, which I think is really interesting. So in a Lawrence Durrell narrative system, there is no canonical objectivity. There is no statement about the events.
The Greece that I knew as a young and aggressive poet has changed. Nevertheless, I feel there might be some point in trying to recollect and perhaps recreate a little bit of the Greece which is not finished yet and not gone for good, and whose ghost still rises up to afflict me from time to time. And you don't have to dig very far to find real bone structure, so that it really is possible to disinter the Greece I knew as a boy of 23 as effectively as the archaeologists have disinterred long-lost civilizations. And it's with the same joy and pleasure one always finds oneself mentally doing precisely that.
The first volume of which was published in 1974. The title of that novel is Monsieur, but the subtitle is Prince of Darkness. You know, the film is basically a mashup of these ideas from Lawrence Durrell's Avignon Quintet and Robert Anton Wilson's works, including especially Prometheus Rising and Cosmic Trigger. And if you want to go sort of full-blown apophenic with this, if you look at the cover of Prometheus Rising and overlay it with the cover of Prince of Darkness, you'll find that they're formally quite similar. And I often wonder if that wasn't somehow intentional.
Done himself. You see this? It's a map. The red dot is Hub's End. It's not on any real map, but look at this. The 2 line up.
Anyway, that more or less brings me, I think, to the end of this video. And for the time being, to the end of my discussion of Prince of Darkness. There is going to be a 3rd part, but
I can't just jump right into it because I have to establish some theoretical stuff first.
So anyway, the next video is going to return a little bit more to my personal narrative. I hope you'll stay tuned for that. Thanks for watching this one, and see you later. Bye-bye!
Excuse me, sir. Is there some reason why you're not telling us what we're going to be doing?
In time.